Now I will discuss about the caching in Laravel. Caching in Laravel is actually a technique that is used to temporarily store frequently used data in a fast access memory or storage. For example, in your website, there is a page where a lot of visitors are coming per day, right? So in that case, instead of loading data each time from your database, you can easily store the data into a cache. So each time a visitor comes, he will just see the data that will be pulled from the cache instead of the database. And so your website's performance will be improved. In this way, you can also save the server cost and you can also make the response time faster. I will show you through an example so that you can easily understand how to work with the cache. I am first going to my VS Code editor, and here you see a fresh Laravel I have installed because I will show you everything from the scratch. So first I am going to my terminal and I am going to create a table, and I will insert some data into the table so that you can understand how much time it takes when I pull the data straight from the database and how much time it takes if I load the data from the cache. So in order to show you the difference, I will just add some data into my database table. So let's start creating a migration file first. So php artisan make migration, and then I will write create, for example, students table. I am going to work with this. So in the database, I am going to the migrations. This is my migration file, and for example, here I am going to enter the student name as a field, and another field I will add here, that is student email. So two fields are okay. Now I am going here to migrate. So php artisan migrate, but before going there, I am going to open my env file. For example, my database name will be Laravel, and this is the username root, and I am going to assign the password root because my password is root. So now let's press enter. It is asking me if it will create a database by the name Laravel. I am going to write here yes, and now I am going to my phpMyAdmin, refresh, and you will see that a new database comes, that's name is Laravel. Here you also see that a table comes, that's name is students table. So I am going to open the students table, and here you see two fields are there, one is name and another one is email. Now what I will do, I will just insert a lot of data, for example several thousands of information in this table. Okay, so let's go to create a seeder. For this I will use a seeder. So but before going to do work with seeder, I am going to create a model. So php artisan make model. As my table name is students, my model name will be singular form student. Okay, model is created. Now I am going to create php artisan make seeder. Then I am going to create a seeder, that is student seeder. My seeder file is created. I am going to there. Now into the database there is a seeders, and also you see in the models student model is created. Okay, fine. Now in the seeder I created the student seeder. I am going to open it. So here I am going to run some codes here. For example, I will insert data into the student, okay, student table. So in the top I am going to call first app models student, and here I am going to create a object of the student and put that into a object variable, this one equal to new student. And now I am going to enter two data, one is name and another one will be email. So email. Now I can use object, for example save. So the data, if I run this seeder, in order to run this seeder I will have to code into the database seeder, and here I will have to use this call, and here student seeder class. If I call this, automatically this seeder will run and then new student will be added. I want here to add, for example, 5000 students. Okay, so in order to add the fake data, I am going to use a faker. So here I call faker of factory as faker. Okay, so here in the top I will use the faker create, and here this one I am going to assign into a faker. So this variable I will use here, that is faker of name, and for the email I will use faker of email. If you do not understand how to use the seeder and faker, just go back to my seeder lecture and faker lecture. Also I have showed that what is factory, so you will understand. Just go back and see my seeder and faker tutorials. Okay, I am just going to use the seeder and faker because I am going to add a big number of data in my database to understand how many times it actually will take to load the data. Because if you just add 2 or 3 data, you will not understand it easily, the time difference if I load the data from a database and if I load the data from the cache. So in order to make you understand about this, I am going to add the big data, so I am going to use a faker just for this purpose. For example, I am going to run a loop here. For example, I equal to 0, I less than equal to 5, or I start from 1, this is 5000, and I plus plus. So I call a loop here, and okay, like this. So 5000 data will be inserted into the students table using the faker. So let's check it. Now if I go to database, you see that there is no data. Now I am going to my terminal and run this command php artisan db seed. You are seeing that seeding database, yes, it is completed. Now I am going to refresh it. You see that a big data comes here. If I go to the last page, you see that the 5000 is the ID, the last person ID. So email and name, for the fake email and fake name just added here, and that is total 5000. So big data, right? Now I am going to do one thing, that is I am going to create a controller for my task, php artisan make controller, and for example this is student controller. My controller is created. Now I am going to the controller, and here this is controller, student controller. Here I am going to write a function, public function, index function for example, and here I am just going to write my code. In the top I am going to use app, then models and student. I will use the eloquent system, so I will need model. So here I will just show the data from the database. For example, from the students table I will get all the data I want to get. Okay, so here all data is a variable, for example, and I want to show you all the data. So all data, and to add it in a good format I want to show this, and you will see all the data from the database here. But before showing the data there, I am going to my route. So routes, then web.php, and here I am just going to remove it. Here I am going to call my controller, that is student controller class, and function is index, and this controller I will just add in the top, use app http controllers, and then student controller. Now I will just run my code. Okay, so here from here refresh, you see that all the data comes here like this. If I want in a good or better format, then instead of dd I am just going to call here a for each loop, and all data as then item. Okay, so here item, then I am going to show item of student name only. For example, I am going to show the name, not email, only name. So here if I refresh it, you will see that all the 5000 students name are here. Now here I am going to show for example the ID, so that you can understand better. So here for example item ID dot, I am going to concat here this one. So that will be better, and I am going to refresh. You see that yes, so ID 1 2 3. So in this way total here are 5,000 students. You see all are showing here. Now how I will understand that how many times it will actually take to load this data. So in order to work with that, I am going to search Google. I will install a debugger now. Okay, so search for Laravel debug package, debug bar. This one I will use, this one first one. Okay, so here there will be a nice debug bar in the bottom if I install it. In order to use that, I am going into bottom, and here you see that the installation process is here. I am going to copy this code, this line actually I need. So here in the terminal I am going to install it. So new terminal, and I am going to install this one. So it will be installed. Yes, installation is done. Okay, fine. Then they are telling me to use another one, copy the package config. Okay, so here I am going to copy this code, and I will run that also here. Okay, so asset publishing is completed. Now if I load my application, what will happen? If I load my application, you see that a nice debug bar comes in the bottom. If I click here any of this item, for example message or timeline, then it will be up. Now here from this debug bar you will be able to see the exceptions. If there is any error or exceptions, you will see that here. For example, I am going to make an error here intentionally. Okay, so the function I am going to use gets. Then if I want to run my application, you will see that actually there is nothing here by gets. So here you see that in the exception, if you go from here to the exception, here it is showing what is the error. In detail it is telling you that bad method call exception happens. That means there is no method by this name, that is gets. So in this way you can easily debug your application. You see that this is views. What view files are called will be shown here, but in my case my controller is here, but I just show the data here. I did not pass this information into any view file, so it is not actually showing in the list. But if I use any view, it will be shown in this list. Then the routes I have used, you see that there is only one route, that is get route, and it is showing the middleware is default middleware web. Controller is this one, that is student controller index, and this one is student controller PHP, that is file, etc. showing here. I did not use any prefix, so it is not showing here. The namespace, where, etc. are not showing here. There is queries. In this page, which query run? You see that here a query run from a student table. I get all that, right? If I write here like this, where ID equal to 1, then only one data will be shown, right? If I refresh it here, if I go to queries, I am going to pull it up. Okay, if you click on queries, you see that now the query is changed. Select all from students where ID equal to 1. This one is actually rendered from this code. When you are going to use the model, you are actually using the short form, but actually which query is running here you can easily show from here. If you refresh, you see that now this query comes, select all from students. So raw SQL query will be shown here if you go to the queries tab. Then there is models, which model I have used here, and this model has total 5,000 information, right? It is showing here. If you use get, it will shown here. If you use session, it will shown here. And the request also here, it will be shown the status code. As this is successful my operation, so you know that status code 200 means the request is successful. So it is showing here, and also there are many information showing here. But my main thing to discuss is you also see how many times it is actually taking to get all the data. When I pull all the data, what is the time it is taking? You see that 93 ms. If I refresh it again, you see that 90 millisecond it is actually taking. The request duration is showing here, right? So if I again refresh here, you see that 91. So average is 89 to 90 like this, right? Also in sometimes it is showing 60, but the query is running. This is the main thing I will show you here. The query is running this one. That means my data is coming from the database using this query. So it is taking more time. If you have multiple commands, for example, if I again show this, that means 2 times I will call this data from the database, for example, like this, 2 times copy paste. Then what it will happen, if we refresh, you see that now the time is increased. Now it is 131 ms. If you refresh, 130 ms, right? Now what I can do, I am not going to do that. Just remember that if I use the normal query first time, it is taking average 80 to 90 this ms. Okay, this time it is taking. Now I will apply the cache here. Now what I will do, in order to apply the cache, in the top I will here use illuminate, then support, then facets, then cache. That means I am going to use the cache facet here. So I just call this class using here, and here into my code I will have to tell that this data, you see, this is a query, but I will not write the straight query here. Instead of, what I will write a cache, then cache remember. For example, if you use the cache remember like this, so here you will have to use total 3 parameters, 1, then 2, then 3. So first parameter, you will have to just give any name to this cache where the data will be saved. You can give any name. You can give is students, or if I use here school students, for example, I just give any name here. And another one is actually the total time. For example, if I want to tell that total 60 seconds this cache it will be keep in my hand, then you will just put 60. Or for only 30 seconds, I am going to use the 30 here. I want that only for 30 seconds the data will be in my cache, and then it will be destroyed. If you want here, you can just save the cache for 1 day, 2 days, 7 days, 1 month, etc. Just what you give here as the value, that will be in second. Okay, now the third one is actually a callback function. This is a callback function, and in this callback function I will have to return. So return, what I will return, in this return I will write the code, that is a student get, like this. So is return student get, I will just put this one here. So this query I will not need, I am just going to do this, and this one variable I am going to put like this. So first I straight called the data from the database, but now instead of pulling the data from the database, I am going to save this in my cache, and after saving that, this data will be pulled from the cache. Now if I want to show you how it works, so just my task is completed. Now I am going here, I am just going to refresh. First time you will not see any change, it is okay. Now for the second time, if I refresh, you will see that there is no data here. Okay, so you see that there is no data, my data is already into the cache, and so you do not see any data here. Now if I refresh, 80 ms showing, actually what is happened here, I am going to see a student get all the data for the 30 seconds. So just wait for 30 seconds. Let's check what actually was before 30 seconds. First, if the 30 seconds is expired, then the time will be increased. If I refresh, you see that it is passed. So you see that now the request is increased, and you see that here now the total request time is 122 ms. So here you see any query means now the data is not into the cache, right? So when the data is not into the cache, you see that 122 ms is the request time to show the data. But if I refresh, that means now it is into the cache, and after the caching, now the time you see that it is less and it is only 84 ms. So this is actually the performance. I hope you have understood how to increase the performance using the cache. If you want that my cache will not expire and it will be, my data will be into the cache forever, so in that case what you can do, I am just going to make this off, and here instead of remember, here I will use remember forever function like this, and here this second parameter I will delete. That means this data will be into here forever and will not be removed. I am just going to remove this. Now let's check it. I am just going here, refresh. You see that now it is taking 125 ms, but if I now refresh, you see that again 85 ms. But now if you wait for 30 seconds, you will see that the cache is not expiring, because I told that it will remember it forever, no expiration. So if there is actually no expiration, then the question is how I can remove the data from the cache, because sometimes my data may be needed to update. So if you update some information in your students table, so how I can just cache the data again, or how I can remove the data from the cache. You see that already my 30 seconds are passed by. So if I refresh, you see that it is still in the cache. That means it will never expire. So in order to manually delete the data from the cache, I can do one thing. I am just going to do like this. I bring back the previous state, and before going to work with that, I just use the cache forget. That means I will remove the data from the cache. What was my cache name here? Is school students. Now this name is important. I am going to copy this and paste it here, and now if I refresh it, you see that the data is backed. If you now refresh multiple times, no problem, because this data is no more in the cache. That means the data is deleted from the cache. There is another way to delete that data from the cache. That is, if you do not want to run this command cache forget school students like this, you can go to the terminal and you can use another system to delete all the cache, that is php artisan then cache clear. If you run this command, press enter, you see that the application cache cleared successfully. So instead of using the cache forget, you can also run this command in your terminal, and then the cache will also be deleted. So I hope you have understood how to work with the caching system in Laravel.